Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Steve Rader from NASA's Center of Excellence in Collaborative Innovation. It deploys crowdsourcing and prize-based programs to solve some of our toughest mission-critical problems. The center was founded around 2011 with the support of the White House's Science and Technology Office to bring in a new level of co-creation, open innovation to NASA and other agencies throughout the U.S. government, which I think is fascinating. They are inching up to almost 500 challenges. Steve's team has helped guide a wide range of projects, everything from technologies to disrupt the flow of opioids into our country to developing manufacturing processes that can be done on lunar surfaces outside of the Earth. So we'll just leave it at that. Wide range of stuff. Steve, it's good to have you here. Looking good down there in Houston.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me on. This is great.
It's good to see you again. Tell us about the center and also the NASA Tournament Lab. You've got so much fun stuff going on, so much cool stuff going on down there. Full disclosure, I've been down there many times bringing companies down there. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but this is a declassified conversation. So
there you go. So our Center of Excellence has been around, like you say, for almost 10 years now. It actually came out of some pilot work in 2009, 2010. And yeah, we help projects all across NASA and all across the federal government to try to use these new open innovation tools. So we have the contracts in place with lots of different crowd vendors. We kind of help projects understand what they can do with those and what they can't, and help them kind of, anything new, you kind of have to have help. You can't just throw it at somebody and expect them to use it. And so our office kind of focuses on being Sherpas, if you will. We kind of help them carry the pack and learn how to use these new tools. And in that, we've been trying to pilot new ways of using these tools and new features, and it's been quite a ride.
Sherpa is not a term that you normally hear from a government employee, so I like your attitude already. But how did you guys shift from, this very engineering-centric, I'm going to develop this, get out of my office culture to open innovation? That was a huge, the collaborative innovation, whatever we want to call it these days. Co-creation is the current buzzword. But how did you, why really did they come around to that?
The history is really fascinating. It really kind of came about, like I say, about in 2009, Dr. Jeff Davis, who headed up our Human Health and Performance Directorate. So all of the astronaut science, all the kind of what's happening with the human body research in space. And they got a big budget cut. And suddenly they were looking at how do we do all of this R&D with, literally 60% of our budget that we had from the previous year. And Jeff went out and benchmarked with a bunch of different industries, Procter & Gamble, Mattel, others, to try to figure out what are people doing in the R&D space. And he also took a course at Harvard with Kareem Lakhani, and throughout that really found open innovation challenges were at play, and that they were being really successful. So he brought in some pilot projects to do and ran those pilots on projects we needed help on. And sure enough, it was this huge value. We got a lot of great ideas that came in. And that was when I think the switch was flipped of, okay, this really does work, and it really does bring a cost benefit with it. And from there, it's all been about kind of adopting and playing with that set of tools to really understand the tools, how they work, and how to get the projects to use them, which is actually a big barrier that we've had to overcome.
And have you found that crowdsourcing kind of streamlines problem solving? And I mean, you have a bureaucracy down there that partially is good. I mean, the last time I was down there, they showed me the timeline for the mission to Mars, and it was like a decade of work that had to be done, and all these little things that have to get checked, almost like a countdown of a launch. Otherwise, it doesn't pass go. And that's a very different culture to just throw a bunch of crowdsourcing people into. What's been the benefit, I guess?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because there's a couple of factors that are at play, right? We live in a world that's very different than just 10, 15 years ago, right? The pace of technology is just at this breakneck speed that you can't just go out and find the latest and greatest tech to go start developing on and expect to find that with a Google search. It often exists in another domain. There's a ton of work going on in different industries that applies back to us. If you look at it, what you find at the technology landscape, what you find is there's all sorts of technologies like machine learning and additive manufacturing and robotics that are all being used and developed and technologies being developed across almost every industry, right. Which means that they're developing solutions that could actually transfer back to us. And so this big technology explosion has resulted in a new situation where you need to get out of your discipline to find the actual answers. And open innovation, crowdsourcing, is a remarkable way to find those people that can connect the dots between some other industry and how they've taken machine learning or additive manufacturing forward and say, hey, that can help you too. And so we've seen crowdsourcing help there. The other way is, you don't think about it, but a crowdsourcing challenge, when you get, say, 500 people working on a problem and only, 1 or 5 winners, what you're really doing is something that in innovation circles talked about all the time, is you're failing on a massive scale in parallel very rapidly. Right. So you've got 500 people, 495 of which are going to fail, and they're going to all be trying something different, and you've got a system set up where you can easily filter those down to the ones that benefit you at that time. And so for that reason, it's really great for innovation because it gives you both that lots of attempts while at the same time giving you that multidiscipline diversity piece that's so important.
And large corporations at Kellogg, I call them BFSs, big, fat, and slow. They don't like failure inside the walls, but somehow failure outside isn't such a bad thing, and it gives right. that repetition and trial and error. But you're not just doing this for NASA. I'll ask you about some of your favorite projects in a bit, but you're doing it for other agencies. That seems a little overwhelming. I mean, I'm an advisor to the NSF. We're working with Oak Ridge Labs through one of our companies, and I've done work with DHS. That just one of those is overwhelming to a group. Why are you actually helping other groups?
Well, that was actually part of that mandate. You talked about Office of Science and Technology Policy at the White House asking for us to stand up the Center of Excellence. Well, that actually elevated us to an agency level as well. So it got that effort kind of working across our agency. And then the thing that we were kind of tasked with doing is and help other agencies kind of along. And so the first thing we did was made our contracts accessible through interagency agreement, because procurement is the big barrier in government. It takes almost a year to get somebody on contract a lot of times. And so who's going to try out, say, Topcoder to build some code if they've never used crowdsourcing? Would you ever go to that trouble of a 9-month or a 12-month procurement? And so we have that ready for them. And it's really been working with GSA, and there's a government prizes and challenges community practice, and we've kind of worked with them. And honestly, it's been really word of mouth, where different agencies basically get referred to us as a possible way to try this stuff out. We meet with them, we counsel with them. We've probably met with over 30 different agencies and had discussions and consultations. And then we've actually done, I think, challenges of at least 15 different agencies.
You've kind of run it for them, but then you kind of stand them up and almost like train the trainer, get them going on their own.
Exactly. What we're doing is helping them understand how to frame the problem. Yep. We're doing a matchmaking through our multi-vendor contract, where we get them with one of these crowds, and then we set them off to work with them. One of the things that we focus on in our CoECI, and the reason we created the public brand, the NASA Tournament Lab, which you mentioned earlier, mm-hmm. that's kind of what we're called in the public, right? The reason we did that was we wanted to access not just crowds. Like, we didn't want to just run challenges direct to the public. We wanted to leverage these curated communities, these communities of passion like Topcoder and Innocentive and Nine Sigma and, Tongle. These are communities where they've pulled people together that really have a passion about something. They've developed that passion and then created a way to productize the results of what that team can do.
Right.
But they've also gotten really good in these curated crowds at executing challenges. And so our whole concept was, let's not reinvent all that and try to create our own crowd and our own process and have to recruit people out of the public. Let's use these curated crowds, which most of them are available for anyone to join for free. So they're still open to the public, but then use their expertise to run challenges. And they're fascinating. Each one has a different way. Topcoder will take a software development problem and cut it into 25 different contests.
Yeah, which is which is kind of the DNA of good outsourced kind of crowdsourced stuff. Those of you that don't know all those names you just rattled off, those are like 3 of 40 platforms that he works with, curating anywhere from 100 to 110 million people that are on these platforms. And any of you that are listening could get on them as well. But you mentioned something, well, you just mentioned a lot, actually. We have a group called Government Prizes and Programs, I think it was.
So GSA, which is the Government Services Administration, they host a Government Prizes and Challenges community of practice.
Oh,
and so this is a community where we all get together from time to time and talk about our lessons learned, and we have a toolkit that's actually out for anyone can see it, and it talks about how to run challenges, how to formulate them. So a lot of case studies there. At one point we had a set of mentors. I was one of those, where we would, agree to kind of help different agencies with this kind of work and to understand what the barriers are and how to get over those.
Yeah, and with the NSA, we're like giving out $1 million grants to all types of teams that are, very well curated, mostly academia. But no, I just thought it was funny. We had a group called Government Prizes because there's all types of double entendres in there. I'll stay away from the political scene here. But the real buzzword you just hit on was failure. Most companies that are listening in, they still, after all the books and all the speeches, they still don't know how to deal with failure well. And crowdsourcing can allow you to do that at a certain level. I'm reminded, I have brought a few companies down to the Johnson Space Center through my program called Dancing with Startups. Exelon's been down there. Whirlpool was one that I remember that I'm actually allowed to talk about now years later. So we went down there and met with your scientists and your program directors about how do you come up with a waterless system to do laundry, because you were struggling with it, obviously, and they were struggling with it. The next generation of laundry going into third world countries, maybe we shouldn't use so much water or none at all. And we worked on it for maybe a year with them. I won't say what kind of technologies you were looking at, but is that a good example of we tried to get a crowdsource thing going on, but that was more collaboration. But I feel like that was almost an unsolvable challenge.
Well, it's funny because that actually is one of our pilot challenges that we ran in 2010, and we learned a valuable lesson out of that, and that was complex system level problems are not great for crowdsourcing at this time. You can get some progress and you might luck into something, but if you think about it, crowds in general are individuals and not teams. And in order to attack a system problem, you have to have someone who knows the electronics and somebody knows the plumbing and somebody who knows the mechanics. And it's very hard to find one individual that can do all of that well. And so that was a big lesson learned. When we ran that challenge in 2010, we didn't get a lot of answers out of that challenge. And one of the pieces of feedback we got from Innocentive, the company that helped us, was, if you want a successful challenge, break it down. There's a great quote from Einstein that says, if you have an hour to solve a problem, he would use 55 minutes of that defining the problem and 5 minutes solving the problem.
Exactly.
And I think that's something we actually teach a lot in the innovation world is, don't jump into the solution space. Spend some time breaking that problem down and understanding it. And then what we find is challenges that are more atomic and more single discipline do much better. But we've had our fair share of failures in challenges.
That's fascinating. So full system level solutions are probably not the best thing for crowdsource because you got to break it down. And that's just good advice for running your own company in the first place. So it sounds like the waterless laundry was an unsolved problem. Those of you listening in, there is a huge problem still to be solved there. So we'll tell you how to get in touch with Steve after this. What have been some of your favorite things that have been invented? You know, I think you're almost up to 500 challenges now, which is, that's a lot of activity. You've got a lot going on.
There's so many cool things that have come out of challenges. One challenge we worked on a few years ago was the asteroid detection challenge. Asteroids are very small compared to planetary bodies. They don't reflect light very well. They're rotating. They're just really hard to see until they're right upon us. And I think in the news, people, they're surprised when they see that an asteroid is coming right next to us.
Right.
And some of them can be very dangerous. And so we at NASA have been trying to up our game on detection. And we ran a challenge around an algorithm improvement, a data science challenge that ran on Topcoder. And we were able to improve that algorithm that took a series of images and could detect where an asteroid, when there was an asteroid in those frames. And we improved that like 15% from the Catalina Sky Survey that was the baseline. But then we actually packaged that up, and this is kind of what makes it one of my favorites, is they packaged that up as a downloadable app that amateur astronomers who now have very sophisticated telescopes could use that software. So not only did we improve the algorithm's capability to find asteroids, the other part of that problem is looking at all pieces of the sky, and we increased our ability to look out into the heavens by utilizing amateur astronomers.
Wow. So that's got a lot of,
I really like that one.
There's some consumer applications there. When I was going to ask you a different question, but you just triggered a different. So when I was down there a few times, it was almost like an open source platform saying, hey, we have some of the best technology and secrets in the world here, the ones that we're going to declassify and allow you to use them. We've gone down there on like shopping trips to figure out, there was even an incubator there for a while where people could, invent new products and services around there. What about that? Taking technology, kind of exporting it out of the government and starting a company or using it inside a large corporation.
Yeah, so we have an entire technology transfer office that tries to take technologies that NASA has developed and try to find those spinoffs. And we have used some of our open innovation tools, some work with Yet2, as well as I think we've posted a few challenges out there either on our internal NASA work platform, which is our employee crowd,
yep.
As well as out in, I think when 9 Sigma was on, we might have done some there as well. Just trying to see, can we put that same innovation spin on that repurposing of NASA technology? And there's a lot of spinoffs, and we continue to try to do that because that is kind of the part of the equation, right? Is how can we bring innovation in to help us, and how can we take things that we learn and spin them out to other industries? So we do try to work both sides of that equation.
And that goes back to the 60s, really. It's been something that's you've always brought things back. I mean, compounds have been invented, all types of solutions and, meaning physical solutions and stuff like that. So that brings up a question, though, about the teams. So the teams can have access to some of your they can, you're giving them a problem to work on, but they can also ask you for, hey, what do you have here that we can all, kind of leverage from? But the question really was, how do you choose the teams? How do you know you're choosing the right people? Is it more of a quantity thing versus quality? So as a CEO of a large corporation, they're always looking for the quality people, but you're actually in the crowd space saying, I could give this 50 teams can work on this.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of crowdsourcing, is it actually attacks both the depth and the breadth question, because diversity is often, especially in today's technology world where so much parallel work's going on, having people that can connect the dots and know a little bit about what you do, but a little bit about what somebody else does, and is able to say, hey, John Deere came up with this great machine learning algorithm that they use on their super smart robotic mobile farms.
Right.
And, a NASA person might look at that technology and never recognize that as something that could benefit us. But somebody who knows a little bit about what we do and a little bit what they do might say, oh, this is all about production and about, how you have this fuel problem where it's got to convert this to that. this is exactly just needs an adaptation. And we've seen that over and over. We had a solar flare algorithm where it was someone in the cell phone industry that was actually said, I had a heliophysics degree I never used from 50 years ago. And he was able to say, I've got math that's used to extract signal from noise that we use in cell phones, and I can repurpose that math to help us get a better solar flare prediction. That's that connecting the dots. And in fact, we went from a 2-hour prediction capability to a 4-hour prediction capability with that solution. So there's some really fascinating kind of multidiscipline things. We had a challenge called Space Poop, where astronauts would have to hop into their orange launch and entry suits if we had a leak on the Orion and had just fired the rocket to go to the moon. Well, if you do that, you're going to be in those suits for about 144 hours. And that's a very long time to deal with human fluids and the skin problems you have that turn into real health issues. And so we posted that out as a problem. The winner of that challenge was a flight surgeon at the Air Force who actually said, 15 PSI, that's about what you're using for suit pressure. And we do that same thing in laparoscopic surgery. We pressurize the belly to about that same, and then we insert this little airlock so that we can actually pass wipes and instruments back and forth. Couldn't you use that to try to help actually cleaning and other things? And it's that kind of moving technologies between domains that is often where we find the solution.
Yeah, it brings a whole new definition of serendipity. And what kind of prizes are we giving out here?
We have had prizes all the way from $50 for some graphics or CAD work, all the way up to I believe when we helped Homeland Security run their opioid detection challenge or their passenger screening, it was well over $1 million. We have a sister program called the Centennial Challenges that routinely runs multi-year kind of system level challenges, kind of more like X Prize level, where they'll give out $1 million. So it just kind of depends. They really range. I would say $100,000 is probably the average.
Yeah, that's good. Never underestimate the free trip to the Johnson Space Center. I got to ride around in the it was a version of the lunar vehicle. It wasn't the actual one that was going to Mars, but it was one of the prototypes. Yeah. That thing was crazy, the way it could just drive around. They wouldn't let me drive it, of course.
So it's funny, on our internal crowd, where we have about 30,000 NASA employees and contractors in our own crowd that we curate, one of the prizes we give out if you solve a challenge on that platform is a cool NASA experience, and one of those at Johnson is to drive that rover. So you get to go out and drive the rover as your prize.
Yeah, he told me, he's like, Dean, it'll take me too long to teach you how to do this, and we have a lot of meetings to get to today. So he took me for a ride. He's like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm getting car sick, please.
It's funny.
He said even if you drove it, you would still be car sick, so forget it.
You talk about incentives.
Yeah.
One of the things we've studied a lot is crowd incentives. And what's fascinating is a lot of people concentrate on the money. But the reality is we found that there's actually what we call the 4 Gs: gold, guts, glory, and good. And the best platforms kind of exercise all of those as potential rewards. So guts is, it's just a hard problem. And there are people that just want to solve hard problems. The glory, they have leaderboards. They put your name out there if you win. You get a reputation. And the good is altruism, which NASA actually benefits from that. People want to be part of the mission. They want to be part of what the good they see NASA doing. And so a lot of people will participate not for the money, but because they want to be part of the mission.
Yeah. And many companies are gravitating to it now. Reed Hastings, the Netflix CEO, did a crowdsourced innovation years ago when their algorithm was just running out of gas. This is the old algorithm, and threw it out to the crowd and had the leaderboard. They did the 4 Gs. There was probably 3 Gs at the time. 4G sounds better. Or if you're Verizon, 5G. Anyway, it really worked. They did come up with a new innovation. If you had scribbled this algorithm on a cocktail napkin, you would have received $1 million. The interesting part about that leaderboard is the top 2 teams were neck and neck, when they eventually combined, as you know, and won. The AT&T representatives who were just working on the side on this project were not allowed to keep half of the $1 million that they got, but they had a lot of glory out of it for sure. That algorithm now is probably old and dead, and there's all new technologies now coming together. But most of the crowdsourced things people hear about are little cool, things that you buy in ST or intense software things. So what is you must have a lot of hardware versus software type of challenges.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned the opioid detection challenge. That was very much a hardware system to put in the mail stream because opioids were coming through the mail. And
really? So it was like a scanner type of thing?
Yeah, so they had a bunch of different scanning technologies that came out of that were developed that were then combined with the mail system flow, and it was amazing. We've done the same thing where we had a partnership with Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to develop particulate sensors. They wanted to develop them cheaper, more accurate sensors that could be used with city pollution monitoring, and we wanted a more accurate, cheaper solution for space station because of the closed loop air. And at the time, particulate sensors really were not great and very expensive for better readings. And that partnership yielded several new technologies. One was just a total new approach to how to make that sensor. The other one was really a leap ahead in the performance of an existing technology. So yeah, we definitely are in the hardware game as well. It's a little bit tricky because hardware does have other pieces, like you have to have lab testing, you have to actually have a lot more infrastructure to run some of those. So we tend to, the easier thing to run, a little more less expensive, is the conceptual design, the kind of give us a white paper on this or prove to us in your design calculations why this is good.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I guess that's going to be a long question. Let's go with what's been the biggest challenge out of this process? I mean, you're working for one of the most bureaucratic organizations in the world. Though NASA, having been there a few times, has really changed. It's amazing how open it is, having gone through a lot of change over the last 2 decades. But what's been your challenge getting this thing, hitting on all cylinders, which it seems to be doing now?
Well, I tell you, I still feel like we're just starting. Our biggest hurdle is adoption. Imagine for a second that you're a NASA employee. Why did you come to NASA? Well, you came to NASA to be an innovator.
Right.
And when you get here, what you find is, yes, you get to be an innovator, but like with all engineering, the opportunity for that is pretty small compared to actually doing some of the testing or, things that don't fit into that innovation category. So if somebody came to you and said, hey, we have this new way for you to do innovation, and it's basically, we want to outsource that, then your attitude is going to be like, wait a second, I'm the innovator. You hired me to be the innovator, and now you're wanting to take the most fun part of my job and hand it out to the public. That's crazy. And initially, our messaging was, look at what this solver did, and we would tell, the winners of this pilot challenge, look who they are and what they did. Sure. And what we found was our messaging was wrong. Our messaging really needed to be something more like, we need to help you as NASA innovators find the best starting point for your innovation. We need to equip you with the latest and greatest technology, the best ideas, everything else. So instead of saying we're replacing you, we said, look, you at NASA have to do the hard work of actually meeting all the requirements and fitting this in. But you would never start a project with a 10-year-old version of Excel and a 5-year-old computer, right? That would be crazy, right? And you would never try to make the latest and greatest car by going and getting a Model T engine. That's crazy. And yet what we're telling them is, look, the world is changing at such a fast pace. You can't Google the latest and greatest tech. And so, and you definitely have to figure out that a lot of the best starting points exist in other companies and other domains. And so how do you access this? And what we say is, look, crowdsourcing is the best way for us to find those technologies, those ideas, the things that then you have to take and make into true performance multipliers. And that messaging has taken a while to catch on. We have to have a lot of really good case studies to show. We have to have a lot of good successes. But that snowball builds up. And what happens after a while is a little bit of that FOMO, right? That fear of missing out, where somebody says, well, wait, they just ran a challenge and got these great results. I need to do that. And so it kind of turns the table, and it's really has to go from a pull to a push, right? Where you're trying to extract those from people. We used to spend a lot of time basically selling our service, saying, you should do this because you'll get great results. Now, those requests just come to us. We don't have to market nearly as much. We still do educate the workforce, but we don't actually have to pull on people as much. It's more coming naturally.
I love it. Well, Steve, I really want to thank you for joining the program today. How do people, I know there's people out there listening to you right now that think, hey, this isn't like we're coming out with the latest, delivery app. This is real rocket science stuff, and I'd love to play in your playground. What's the best way to kind of get involved?
Yeah, if you go to nasa.gov/solve, super easy to remember, right? nasa.gov/solve, you'll find that we list all of our public challenges on that site. If you are interested in other government agencies, all government challenges are listed on challenge.gov.
That's a long list.
Yeah, it is. There are many different agencies doing a lot of work in open innovation now. So it's an exciting time. And I'm always excited to see all the great things that are happening across the government, because I think sometimes we get labeled as not doing some cutting edge stuff, but there really is. It's kind of, we're leading the way in some ways.
Yeah, doing a great job. Really appreciate it. You've been listening to Steve Rader. He is down at NASA's Tournament Lab. Check him out on the web, and good to see you. Hopefully we'll be down there, do a live shoot someday. I can't wait to get back.
That'd be great, Dean. Thanks so much.
Yep, take care.